Hey everyone, welcome back to Positive Connections Radio. Hope you're having a good day. If not such a good day, by the time you finish this show, I hope that you're having a better day. And today we have returning guest Christy Warren, retired fire captain of 25 years, suffering from PTS, diagnosed back in 2014, and her path since that time to the present, helping others receive help, guide others to getting help, and know that it's okay to ask for help. She has her own podcast named Firefighter Deconstructed, and she's coming out with a book next year about her PTS and her path through recovery. If you're needing help, you're a first responder. I work with a great team at First Responder-Wellness in Newport Beach, California. The number is 888-732-5731. Check us out. Look us up on the website, firstresponder-wellness.com. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Positive Connections Radio. This is Mike Cook. This podcast is directed towards first responders and others who may be suffering in silence and are fearful to ask for help. You're not alone. You don't have to lose it all in order to get help. Trust yourself, stand up, and break the stigma.
All right. Hello.
Hello. How you been?
I've been good. Oh, I could put headphones on. It'll sound better too.
I think the last time we were on this show, it was 2019. It was before you even got your own show.
I know. That was like when I was just, yeah, it's like way different now.
Yeah. You're looking great.
Well, thanks.
I know, surprise podcast, huh?
A totally surprise podcast, but it's all good.
What have you been doing? What have you been doing for the last couple of years? I know that you started a podcast, Firefighter Deconstructed.
Yeah, started the podcast. Finished writing a book, and it's going to be published in June of 2023.
Wow.
I've been training for triathlons. I've been entertaining my dog. Yeah,
Harriet's your dog, right?
Yeah, Harriet, my English cream golden retriever. She's a bit of a lunatic.
What's up with the book? I want to hear all about it.
So yeah, I wrote about my experience, working as a firefighter and paramedic and all that, and then getting PTSD and kind of my recovery process and all of that. So I really like to write. It wasn't just kind of like, I mean, it seems like everybody's writing a book these days.
Of course.
So yeah, I always wanted to write I always like to write. So I ended up, when I was kind of starting my recovery, I started writing about calls that were like pestering me and playing over and over in my head. And so I just kept writing, and I was like, wow, I have a book here. So I found somebody to publish it, and it's gonna, come out in June 20th at 23. I'm really excited. They're designing the cover right now.
That's great.
It's gonna be called, the title right now is Flashpoint.
All right. Dude, I'm so proud of you, Christy. I am so
proud. You're so sweet.
I am. I definitely am. We met at West Coast Trauma Retreat in 2018 and as peers.
Mm-hmm.
You believe it was that long ago?
I can't believe it's been that long ago. Well, COVID kind of makes it like, it was like a warp in time. Like those 2 years didn't even count.
Exactly. I look back at that and it's just crazy. But I know a lot of us suffer PTSD and PTSI and a lot of different things that we're not willing to talk about. And I think it's so courageous of you, what you went through and actually asked for help, got help, and are actually paying it forward and helping other people too, just by what you do.
Yeah. I thought for sure when I was going through it, I was the only one. I was like, we have 125 uniformed firefighters here. and why am I the only one who's going through this? And I thought for sure there was something wrong with me. And, there's nothing that anybody really even talked about in our department, or, it's just for veterans. And I was pretty reluctant for a while. And, but yeah, I'm doing great now. And I just don't want anybody to feel alone. And it's just trying to get the message out that it's like, hey, you are not the only one. There are so many of us out there, and there's so much help out there. It's incredible. So yeah, I just want to make sure that, I don't know, like if something like this was around when I went through it, it would have helped a lot. I remember scouring for books on it. And the only thing I found was this NHL goalie who got his neck sliced open from a skate during a game, and they stitched him up. He almost died, obviously. And they stitched him up, and as soon as his stitches were healed enough for him to play, they put him back on the ice, and he ended up getting PTSD really bad. So that was like the only book or something I could find where I was like, wow, somebody else went through this too.
What year were you at probably in the fire department when you figured out something was wrong and you needed some help?
You mean it was like 2014. We had a fatal fire 2000, like near the end of 2013, and I think that was a straw that broke the camel's back. I had no idea about it, but
right. You're how long, how many years were you
25.
At 25 years you started noticing some stuff.
Yeah, after 25 years. But you look back and it's like, oh, I think it was going on for a lot longer.
Right. Do you think the atmosphere has changed a lot since people like you are standing up and talking about it? Are you like reaching out to a lot of people?
Yeah, I think it really is. After I left my department and then another guy left, our department was like, well, actually I should say our union. It wasn't our department. Our union was like, wow, we got to do something. We can't keep losing members. And so they started a peer counseling support team, and they actually did it right, and it's doing really well. And people are utilizing it, and even if just having it around helps validate what you're going through, like even if you don't reach out and use it, just the fact that there is something makes it better, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that it's there in case you need it.
Yeah, or it's just that if it's there, that means that it normalizes it more. It's like it's less, it takes the shame away from it. And it's just like having psychiatrists out there. It's like, oh, okay, well, if there's doctors who study this and treat it, then it's something that needs to be treated, and it's okay. If that makes, what I mean?
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of people out there probably listening to this show too that are wondering what to do. I mean, if they have, and they don't want everybody to know that they have some issues going on. They don't want to lose their badge. They don't want to have to sit behind a desk. What would you suggest to people? I mean, if the very first, they have the courage to actually get help, what would you suggest that they do?
There's so much out there. And I mean, you can really even just Google stuff. There are so many agencies, or I should say organizations out there that are willing to help and point you in the right direction. Because I know that I'd be like, I don't even know where the hell to go. I know that when things started going sideways for me, I went and saw a therapist, and it was really about like, fix me so I can get back to work. Like, let's just fix this and let me get on with my life. But, I totally get that, especially the cops, they get put to a desk pretty quick.
Right.
And nobody wants that. And, there's so much confidential stuff out there, and all these organizations are pretty much always made up of people who've gone through it. So they understand the confidentiality portion of it. And, and any therapist, that's a foundation of their practice is confidentiality.
Sure.
So, I think the most important thing too is find a therapist that is culturally competent, who understands first responders and who understands trauma. And it might take a few therapists to find that one that understands. And so if you go to one, they don't have a clue, then don't give up. Go,
right.
Look for somebody else. And like I said, there's so many resources online. There's so many organizations that are out there to help and find you a therapist and connect you with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely being culturally competent is important. And a lot of us will make that an excuse. Their first therapist, they didn't understand them, or they started having emotional issues when we're talking about our traumas, and we decide, oh, well, no one really understands me, not even my my family. So yeah, don't give up. Have the courage to keep on going and reach out there. The people like you that have gone through it and continue to survive through that and heal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I just try to tell people, like, yeah, don't give up. There, I mean, you will get better. It's a long, sometimes really ugly road, but with help, you will really get better. But you have to want it, and you have to do the work.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes getting to that place where you actually want to get better can actually be really hard too.
Exactly. Well, especially if it's compounded with alcohol use or pills or whatever we try to cover up. I mean, I don't think that's part of your story, but a lot of us end up going that route, and we feel like it's just stuck. First of all, we
Yeah.
are dependent on alcohol, and that we're using that as a coping skill to deal with the things that we don't really want to talk about, but we do want to talk about them and how to get out of that. So there is a way out, definitely. And man, I want to say too, I love listening to your podcast, Christy, because you are
Oh,
so
thanks.
down to earth and you have just great people on it. I really appreciate what you do and the word you're putting out there for everybody else, because, recovery is possible for sure.
Absolutely is. So many people have recovered, and so many people who've been just in the shittiest, darkest, ugliest hole have still come out of it. And I was not or I'm not an alcoholic, but I definitely turned to alcohol because I mean, the bottom line is it works. It shuts things off in your head. It turns everything off, and it can quiet things. And so it works, until it doesn't work. And it just, I mean, ultimately it makes things a lot worse, but in the moment it works. And so it's so easy to turn to. I think I've talked to so many people who've gone through PTSD, PTSI, or PTS, whatever you want to call it. And I think I've only talked to 2 people who didn't use alcohol or pills or anything like that. They just happen to not do it. But yeah, so many people do.
Yeah. Well, I deal with a lot of people. I mean, at First Responder Wellness, we deal with a lot of men and women that come in, and it's not just primary alcohol or drugs. It's I've had a lot of guys that come in that are primary mental health only, and they finally reached a breaking point where they say, "Hey, I need some help," and I'm not going to get help personally unless I know that it's 100% confidential. If I'm worried about it getting back to the department, if I'm worried about my peers knowing about it. But I think as we go along, as the years go by and we keep talking about it and it starts spreading, that it's okay and it's safe to talk about our issues and get help for it. It's actually a strength and a weakness. And we don't have to turn to alcohol. That's the easiest thing. There's a
Absolutely. Yeah.
bar in every corner. And it was easy for me just to pick up a bottle or a drink and just erase it for a little bit, rather than using, coping skills like being mindful and breathing and yoga and meditation and running and exercising or playing hockey or whatever you like to do. We sort of substituted because it's an easy fix.
Yeah. I remember going to the WCPR retreat and them talking in the beginning about, breathing. And I'm like, this is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, I breathe all day long, and how in the hell is breathing going to get rid of these nightmares and these, this video loop of bad calls that I've been on that play over and over and over, and this anxiety? It's like, this is stupid, and mindfulness is stupid, and yoga is stupid, and it's all stupid. There's no way it's going to work. And then, as time went on and I did start healing, and sure as shit right now, like, if, things start kind of, swirling around in my head, I go outside and I go for a walk, and I take a couple breaths, and I just feel my feet on the ground and look around at where I am, and lo and behold, it feels so much better. And it takes a while to get there, but it really does work.
And it takes work to get there too. You know,
Absolutely.
it's easy to say that this is what I want to do, but actually getting out of bed and doing that, it takes effort, you know, and it can be really difficult. But once you do it and start seeing the benefits of it, it sounds stupid. It sounds hokey, you know, breathing. It sounds like meditation and mindfulness is something from the 60s and peace, love, and happiness. But it really is. It really does work. But you have to actually do it and be involved in it.
Yeah, and for a while it doesn't work, and for a while everything just keeps spinning in there. And one thing PTSD or I or whatever does to you is it tells you you're a piece of crap and you're worthless.
Right.
And even if you like truly believe that, you just have to keep telling yourself that you are enough and you are worthy.
Mhm.
And you have to keep breathing and keep walking and keep trying to be mindful, and you just keep doing it. Even if it doesn't work right away and you don't believe it, that's where the work comes in. And it's really hard to do. It's really hard to say I'm enough when you feel like an absolute piece of shit that, deserves to, or should, kill themselves or commit suicide or whatever. And you just have to keep doing that. And eventually the brain will rewire itself. And that's a really important point, I think, too, is that this is an actual brain injury. It's not just like some emotional thing that you can't handle. It's a physical injury that happens to your brain. It's like getting hit in the head with a baseball bat.
Sure. It rewires everything.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon, I mean, people on the outside that haven't experienced something like that, let's take, for example, depression also. It's not something where you say, okay, why don't you just eat healthy? Why don't you just go for a walk? Why don't you just do whatever? It's not an easy fix, really. It really needs to be looked at, and you need to have, it helps to have professionals guide you in that, especially others that have been through it and know that there is a way out. It could be a medication. It could be a medication change. A lot of cops I deal with, they're more likely not to get any kind of medication. They don't want to be considered a drug addict type of thing. But sometimes our body needs a boost. It needs to be redirected, and a lot of medications do help with that.
Absolutely. I'm so against medications. I mean, like, so against them. And then when I finally did take them, it changed everything. It really allowed me to start healing. And it's not a crutch. It's not like some like wussy thing that you need. It's like like I said, it's an actual brain injury, and your brain changes the chemicals that it makes. And like you couldn't tell somebody has PTSD or depression or whatever by a brain scan. You take somebody who doesn't have it and you put the scan up against next to somebody who does have it, and they're completely different.
Right.
In your brain, like, it actually changes size, it gets smaller. And so those medications, like I said, they're not a crux. They are they're just replacing what your body is not making. It's no different than taking insulin for diabetes. Like, absolutely no different at all.
Exactly. Yeah, different parts of our brain fire up and different parts of our brain are injured. And saying PTS or PTSD or PTSI, I usually say PTS. However you want to look at it, just like addiction. If you don't want to call it a disease, I call that an injury also. There's ways you can do to go around that and retrain your brain to think more positively and redirect it. We're not hardwired. I mean, a lot of critical incidences we suffer, we do get into that mindset and we feel, either shameful or we feel regretful and woulda, coulda, shouldas. And, and it's horrific. A lot of the things, we're not supermen, or superwomen. We are human beings. We're able to get to that point in our lives where we're able to pass all the psychological exams and physical exams to do this job. Not everybody can do these jobs as a first responder. However, when we get into it, we're still a human, and we still
Absolutely.
we don't have these superpowers that we can, resist these things that happen in our lives. And talking about it now is becoming more acceptable, and it's looking more as a power than a weakness. And I know a lot of departments personally. I've reached out to a lot of them, and I've had in contact with them. They're developing really strong peer support. They have, confidential help and really good referrals to, clinicians all over the country that just don't say they deal with first responders, because, that's sort of like a code word nowadays. Jump on the train of, dealing with first responders. I know places that say they have been and they're not, but there are a lot of good help people out there that are helping us and redirecting us. And, a lot of us are going back to work, and a lot of us are finding it easier to let go of what they're doing and maybe find something else in their lives to make them happy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it just, like, real quick, my thing about what I call it is, I guess I call it whatever I think people will know what I'm talking about, because it absolutely is an injury. It's not a disorder. And I know there's a big push to change it to PTS or PTSI. And I guess I just call it, like, for me, it doesn't even stand for anything. It's just kind of like what it is. But I completely agree with you there. An incredible strength to ask for help.
Yeah.
To ask for help and stand up and say, I need help, takes so much more strength than drinking and covering it up and not talking about it.
Right.
Because if and so, yeah, we are absolutely human beings, and we can't, you just think about it, you just can't take getting hit in the head with a baseball bat over and over and over and over. And we all have our different, because I kind of liken it to a box. Like, I go on a bad call, open the lid, I put the call in the box, and I close the lid, and I go on. And I think we all have different size boxes, and we can't compare our boxes to other people. There's, depending on, excuse me, some people's boxes blow up when they're a little bit smaller, and some people have bigger ones. And it just, it is what it is.
Yeah. And it starts overfilling too. And we want to keep shoving that stuff down, thinking that we can handle it. And as our outside life or our personal life gets busier and busier, a lot of us start families. We get into long-term relationships, marriages. We're buying houses. We're paying taxes, and the high gas prices, and everything seems to be surrounding us. Plus, we're going to work and dealing with trauma every single day. And the fire departments out there, I mean, you're several days in a row, sometimes weeks, and enforced mandatories. Even police departments now are doing enforced mandatories that they have to work. And pretty soon, it's not just a job or a passion. It's just a hassle, and you start building these resentments up, and then you put the resentments in that box, and the other traumas, and your family life, and everything else that's rolling around. And of course, the option, yeah, I'm going to go, to the bar and blow off some steam. I'm going to, process it that way. I don't want to ask for help because I think it's a weakness. And more and more of us are getting help, and departments out there are actually allowing that to happen. And plus, nowadays, up until I think the sunset clause of the new legislation for PTSD or PTSI, they're able to get help, and they're able to go out on workman's comp to get that help. So that's a definite benefit and a positive to help break that stigma.
Yeah, workers' comp is, I don't know if they're getting better, but they are covering it. Sometimes you have to hire an attorney and go to court and all that crap, because we all know how workers' comp works but they are covering it, like it's an actual injury. And, workers' comp can be so difficult too. And I mean, the whole process can be so difficult because we don't ask for help. We are the help.
Right.
And sometimes when we finally ask for help and we get turned down, or, like workers' comp likes to do to you, they like to shame you. when that happens, that can just, it's like a disaster. Like, oh, okay, I finally asked for help and you treated me like shit. And now I really feel like shit.
Yeah.
And, that's where you just have to keep fighting for yourself, keep
Right.
moving forward.
And there's always going to be roadblocks. And I've dealt with a lot of men and women that have dealt with workman's comp. Some departments and cities, they put roadblocks and they deny. It's a common, they deny the first couple times. Might take 6 months. And there's some departments, specifically San Diego PD and San Diego Fire. I mean, they pretty much, when they send a person over or they have a person that needs help, they already have that paperwork started. It's already pre-approved. So there's no worry on the part of the officer getting help. And
That's awesome.
it's accepted. And it all has to do with the whole structure of the city, the structure of the department, and this attitude that it's okay to get help. You want our men and women out there that are healthy and happy. You don't want a disgruntled person out there. And then the environment around us. I mean, it's even they got, bricks getting thrown through your windshield still, and the negative attitude, and even by our government also. It's a lot of stress, definitely. And it's making a lot of us change our mind about what profession we want to get into.
I know workers' comp can almost be a whole nother like PTS thing that you have to go through. It can be really hard. And, I also want to mention, COVID. And I mean, I don't know if COVID's over talked about, but I can't imagine going through PTS during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're already so isolated,
Right.
and to have to be isolated and have to be alone. I just can't imagine it. So, all of you out there that have, struggled through this during COVID, and if you've come this far, you can survive pretty much anything, because it's just got to be the hardest time without being able, therapists or seeing people over Zoom.
Right.
You can't go to group things. I know a lot of things happen over Zoom, but it's just not the same at all. And, I mean, I don't say regular people, but the whole rest of the world who had to isolate, we're going through like serious depressions and really hard times, not being able to get out there and be with people, and to have PTS on top of that. I really feel for these guys.
Oh, yeah. And just, generally people in general going through 2020 and getting locked down, and if they're not an essential worker, they're basically in their house listening to the news. And a lot of us, and I've known personally, that going through that has actually sparked some things in some people that I know, that they just started taking a downward spiral. And it took them, a year and a half, almost 2 years to realize that, hey, I suffered a lot. I was just, I now this stuff's coming up, even stuff that we might have worked on up until that point, and we're not able to get out of the house and nothing's open, and we sort of feel trapped and we don't know what's going on. It's brought about a lot of things. But the one good thing I think that COVID did bring is I do like Zoom. I know that I started a first responder only meeting, it's AA meeting on Sunday nights back in 2017 in person. And this was in San Diego when I lived there. And every week we'd probably get maybe 4 to 6 people, sometimes 1 or 2. Sometimes I was just alone. It was hard to get first responders into a recovery program, or even a meeting, just a general meeting, even if it's just PTSD, just take out the alcohol or whatever, just a group meeting, because we're afraid. And what 2020 brought around is Zoom. And now we had a meeting last night, and we probably have 26 to 30 first responders on it, and not all of them suffering from alcoholism. Some of them are just straight PTS. And it's a great group where we can reach people from all around the country. I've got people from Colorado and Florida and Las Vegas, and of course California. I'm telling you, it does help. That it's a lot easier, but it is not. It's hard to compare that being in person, but it is convenient. So there's really no there is an excuse, but there's a lot less excuses that you can't connect.
Yeah, I agree. And like you say, it connects us all over the world, or or all over the United States. And it's like, oh, I'm just like this guy in Florida or this lady in Colorado, and it just brings more people together. And I think this, the more that we can normalize it, the better people are gonna or the easier time people are gonna have of asking for help and reaching out for help.
Yeah.
And connection is so, is like, I think the foundation for all of this is, and I think that's why all the peer groups works are so important to be a part of, is you make that connection with other people who are going through or have gone through the same thing that you've gone through. It's so important.
Exactly. And look at us connecting.
I know.
You're making my day just connecting with you, having a cup of coffee and talking to Christy.
I know. I'm so excited to talk to you. It's been really cool. I still thank you every time I see one of those little like kid things that slow down for those little plastic figures that was attacked you at WCP. I remember that.
Oh my God. Yeah. When we were on those walks.
Yeah.
This little figure.
Yeah. I totally thank you every time I see one of those.
Oh, that is so funny. Yeah. I love that place. That is a miracle location. Definitely.
It is.
The 5 days that you go through that. And it's just and I know they're spread out all throughout the country now. And there's probably like 5 or 6 other WCPRs that opened up in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I know that they were booked up like a year in advance just to get us. And it's tough for us to say, oh yeah, well, I know you're suffering PTS, but you're going to have to wait, a year, or you have to be put on the waiting list. And by that time, 24 hours comes around, my mind's already changed. And, I get this myself. It's like the workman comp thing you're talking about. I asked for help and now I can't get it. And I feel like it's not fair. And, why am I doing this job? Am I just a number? Realistically, it's just, I could be replaced anytime. It doesn't just mean anything to me, what I've done for other people. So yeah, that was definitely a great time. But what about, so you got through what you got through, and you're still working on yourself. I know that. And you started your podcast, Firefighter Deconstructed.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way you run that show. I think you've got some great guests on there, and I love your genuineness and your honesty with your life. And it just is so transparent that you want to, help others find the way out. And now you're writing a book, and I'm just so proud of you, man. Definitely.
You're so sweet. I have come a long way. I will say that for sure. And it's like life has never been better. And I can honestly say that PTS was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And it's funny because before all this happened, if you asked me, so what's the very worst thing that could ever happen to you, Christy? And that getting PTS would be it, or not, like, or I as I used to say it, being too weak to do my job.
Right.
That would have been like I going blind, losing my legs, dying, you name it. There would be nothing worse than being like too weak to do my job, because that's really what my foundation of who I was.
Right.
And then everything that the job brings. And now I can honestly look back and say that it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Mm-hmm. I've never been happier. And you have to get through PTS, you have to deal with all of your trauma, not just your work trauma, but, there's a reason why so many of us become first responders. Just, we grew up in chaos, and so we can handle chaos very well.
Sure.
And, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. So I had to, like I said, sorry, I lost my train of thought again. You have to deal with all of your trauma. So you get all of it out of the way, and I'm so much lighter. I don't take things personally like I used to. I used to always think that I was a reason why something went wrong or went bad. And I can say like, oh, that's, that person's problem right now has nothing to do with me. They've got an issue.
Right.
And when things get shitty or I start feeling shitty, I know what it is, and I have the tools now to deal with it.
And a lot of it starts when we're young. It doesn't start when we become a first responder, a firefighter, or whatever, a lot of it is, trauma that we suffered through our lives. A lot of it that brought us to the profession that we chose to help other people that were maybe not there for us, that we wish that would have been there for us to protect us and, right some wrongs in our own personal. But to say that you're grateful for what had happened, I know it didn't feel that way when you're going through it. It doesn't, even with alcoholism, addiction, whatnot. But the survival that we do, the help that we get for ourselves, eventually we can turn around and say, like what you said, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me, because my life has never been better. Not that life all of a sudden is, roses and sunshine. It still goes on. I'm able to deal with life in a whole other manner and able to be mindful. I don't have these racing thoughts. Very possible you go through what you're going through, you continue with your therapy. I don't know if you still have a therapist that you do see, but it's very important to continue it, because once we lose connection with the group and with the community, my disease or my injury, my addiction, my PTS, it wants to seclude me, and it wants me to be in a house alone, i.e. COVID, right? Alone. And it's very familiar. And if I don't reach out and pick up that phone, the phone keeps getting heavier and heavier, and those thoughts just keep getting darker and darker. And I'm going to start heading down that road again. And when I see myself starting to, make that crest again down that road, I change. I try to change it. I pause and I reach out. I reach out to Christy and I say, Christy, this is what's going on in my life. Can you talk me out of it? Or maybe I just want you to listen to me for a little bit. And it helps just to actually get it out of my mouth instead of holding it in, and keep that box fairly clean, so I'm not shoving more stuff in there. So, because it's always going to be there, or backpack, or however analogy you want to look at it. It's just, there's going to be a place that you can put things, but make sure that you take them out before you put stuff on top of it, because it's going to compound again. And I don't ever want to be in the spot that I was before I got help.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's a good way to put it, is you don't keep putting stuff back in your box and keep that clean. And yeah, life's always going to throw things at you, and you're always going to have to adjust. And like you say, you just got to reach out and share with somebody. And, the biggest thing that this whole PTS thing taught me was to be vulnerable and to be authentic. And, I don't have to come in first place to be worthy. And I don't have to be something that I think I'm supposed to be, to be worthy and to be enough. And it makes you, I think, a lot braver. Actually, it makes you able to fail in front of other people, or I don't want to say fail, but, not be awesome in front of other people, and just be so much more authentic and vulnerable. And then when you are like that, it's very contagious. You make other people feel safe, and they can feel vulnerable and authentic around you. And it's such a relief to just say, hey, I'm having a shitty day, or I feel like crap, or I keep trying to do this and get it right, and it's not getting right, or I'm not, making this happen like I'd like to. And to have somebody say, it's okay. You're not any less worthy at all.
No. And when we're able to be vulnerable, I found out in group therapy and working in groups, and that's why I became a counselor too, is that I remember listening to a guy and never met him before, was at a meeting. And at the end of his talk, I thought to myself, he told my story. I've never heard anybody tell my story so well. He was able to articulate what I couldn't talk about yet. I wanted to express myself in a group of people and feel comfortable doing so, knowing that, number one, it's confidential. Number two, that I don't feel like I'm out of place. And the fear of letting out your emotions, that we're driven in to be held down, especially being a police officer. You can't let the public know what's really going on inside. That's saved for behind closed doors, and it does do some damage. It really does, but it can be redirected with the proper help, and peer support is so huge that we can like be in groups and do individual counseling and therapy and just talk. I mean, if you're still working as a first responder somewhere, that you can be more vulnerable and understand and get the cues from others, especially if you're getting help. That, hey, this person, looks like me, a year ago, and not try to fix them, not say, hey, you need to do this, but just be there to listen. And sometimes that's all we need.
Yeah, I remember one of the therapists or clinicians up at WCPR. She works with there just happens to, because of her area, she works with a lot of firefighters from this department. And she tells a story about having a client in and talking, and he kept saying, like, God, I don't want my captain to find out I'm here. I don't want, him to know that I'm having a tough time. And, I don't want him to think less of me and, worry about me being able to do the job. And he can't find out. And she's like, I would give anything to be able to tell him that his captain's coming in to see me after him.
Oh man, that's great.
And if you just think about it, if we could talk, how many people say me too? Like, oh my God. Yeah. When I went back to my department and talked to them about what, I went through and everything, I went and talked to every single shift and told them my story. And then the other guy who got PTS after me, we did it together. We both went back. I can't tell you how much my phone started ringing and people call saying I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And so, I always thought I was the only one from that department. And I can't tell you how many people called me and said they were struggling. And if we had all just had talked about it before, we wouldn't, the shame that we went through and the not wanting anyone to know and struggling alone, it didn't have to happen.
Well, you've heard of the diagnosis. I got this from Dr. Stephen Odom, terminal uniqueness.
Yes.
Terminal uniqueness. It's we're the only one that this is affecting, and no one else will understand. And it
right.
just like the clinician said, it's just of course, you can't, through HIPAA, we can't talk about those things. But
right.
if we would ourselves start like even hinting around, like, I'm depressed. I'm serious depressed. It's not like, hey, you better get some sleep and drink some orange juice in the morning. It's like, I can't get out of my bed. I don't even want to go to the bathroom, right? It's debilitating. But if we start talking about these things and making it more normal, which is happening, it really is happening.
It really is.
I'm seeing it. I'm constantly seeing it. And there's a lot of good people, all good. Every one of us is good. We're inherently good. We just over time start thinking that we're not. And that little voice in our head, our subconscious, tells us that we're not worthy and we're not good enough and we'll never be better and no one will understand us. And then we start reverting back to early traumas in our life that takes us down this hole where we just can't get out of. No one will understand us. But if we would just open up a little bit and just have that courage and say, hey, I'm going through some stuff, Captain. I'm going through some stuff, partner. And I guarantee you that they'll understand and they'll probably be thankful that you said something because they didn't have the courage to actually say something first. And
absolutely.
The door's open,
Yeah, absolutely. When we, especially those of us who went through a lot of trauma when we were kids, we developed these coping mechanisms and they worked, they helped us survive. But then we become adults and we're still using the same kind of survival coping mechanisms that we did when we were, 6 or 7 or however old.
Right.
And they don't serve us anymore because, things are different now and we're adults and we can protect ourselves and, we're not dependent on somebody like we were when we were a kid. And it's hard to break that habit, but yeah, that's something that, a therapist will help you with. But yeah, absolutely. You be careful who you talk to, choose wisely, somebody that you trust. You don't ever feel like you need to share your story with somebody you aren't ready to share it with. And you just do it in small. I remember somebody telling me that, like, so maybe someday when you get to a point, you'll be able to tell other people your story. And I was like, yeah, probably not. And, here I am. I talk about it, like, I feel like all day long, and I just wrote a book,
Yeah.
that's going to be published and everybody's going to read about it. And yeah, I just want to share my story as much as I can. So God, nobody else has to go through what I went through by feeling like they're the only person and took so long to get help. And yeah.
That's the best blessing. And you're a blessing, Christy. And not everybody, like you're right, not everybody deserves to hear your story,
Yep.
ready to hear your story. But like, yeah, you're out on social media with this podcast, you're writing your book. What's your book's name again? Did you have a
Flashpoint?
Flashpoint. Okay. Well,
Flashpoint.
we're going to definitely promote that, because I know that just listening to you and talking with you and knowing you as a friend and everything, I think that what you're doing is wonderful. And I'm sure there's people, driving on the freeway right now in their car, listening to you going, I wish I had that courage to, pick up my phone, hopefully when I stop driving and call someone, or maybe call you. What would you say to that person right now listening to you and wanting to get help, but they're afraid?
There's so much help out there, and there's so much incredible help out there, and it will be the best thing you ever did. And this world will not be better off without you. I promise you that. One of my things right now is just the suicide numbers. They're just, they're, I'm like speechless. And it doesn't need to happen. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Right.
And it's just how you feel right now, and you just have to hang in there. And like I say, there's so much help. I'm sure you'll put my info, in the show notes. And yeah, you can find me. You find my podcast, and I have a website, Firefighter. I think it's ffdeconstructed.com. I don't even remember my own podcast or my own website now. That has resources on it.
Christy Warren. Just put in Christy Warren and Google it.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I am starting to become Googleable.
You are Googleable.
But yeah, there's a thing on there way to contact me. There's resources on there. There's so many resources out there like I said, the majority of the people in these organizations who want to help you and are available for help have been through it. They're not just people like, oh, I'm going to start doing this. I mean, there's plenty of therapists out there who haven't been through it, who haven't been first responders, but there actually are quite a bit of first responders who've gone that route. But there's so much help out there, and it is hard ass work, but it is so worth it. I can't even begin to tell you. And it's not just about getting back to work. I wanted to go back to work, but I realized the cost would have just been way too much. So I ended up retiring early, and that was a whole nother thing I had to deal with. But I got through that, and yeah, I still miss my job a lot, but I'm so happy doing what I'm doing, and I'm so happy to be here. And I came so close to ending my life, and I'm so thankful I didn't. And I just beg people to just hang in there and reach out. And, like I say, reach out. And, you even just ask a question. It's like, well, how do I reach out? The nice thing about the computer is in podcast too, is that nobody has to know that you're Googling that, or that you're listening to a podcast about PTS or how to get help. And you can do that anywhere. Yeah. And you just got to pull the trigger and do it.
Yeah, I work for First Responder Wellness in Newport, and we probably got a census of 40 to 50 men and women of all walks, dispatchers, firefighters, police officers. And it's the best place I've ever worked at in my life. And it's my career now. And it's truly a blessing to do what I do and to be where I'm at and see people getting help. And I love, but we talk a lot about of suicide on this show also, because it's so important to have that dialogue and not be afraid of saying
Mhm.
that word. And just as good. And thank you so much for not killing yourself, because your presence here on earth is so extremely important. And thank you for sharing that, because you are so valuable to this progression of positive thought and action and people getting help, Christy, because there's probably another female. I know there's another female firefighter out there. It's got to be so difficult. You're a female in a male dominated field. You've got to fight that much harder. And then of course, when you get into, oh, well, she's just a girl, of course she needs help. I mean,
Right.
are you gonna ask for help then? You want to be tough. And we're opening it up. You're opening it up where we can have that dialogue. And some, females that are having some trauma right now, they don't want to talk to a guy first responder or a guy clinician. They want to talk to someone that has experienced it like you. And it's so important. Writing your book, having your own podcast is just amazing. And suicide too. A lot of people think it's such a selfish thing. They just got out early. What would you say to that?
It's not, it has nothing to do with being selfish, not even close. It's 100% about ending the pain. It's just, you can't take the pain anymore and you just want it to stop. And, the majority of the people that I've talked to who, gone down that suicide rabbit hole, and so many of us have that, they don't even necessarily want to die.
Right.
They just want to shut things off for a bit. When the closest I came to killing myself, I remember, like, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, because I was going to drive into a tree, and I was like, okay, even if I just get really, really injured and I'm in a coma for a month or two, I don't have to go to work. And the most important part is I don't have to tell anybody why I can't go to work, because I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. It was just eating me alive. And I was like, how am I going to tell these people that I can't do this job, that I'm too weak to do this job? And I'm like, well, if I'm in a coma, I have an excuse.
Yeah.
It was even like, I remember watching something about the Boston Marathon, and some people may say, how could you think this? But they were talking to one guy who lost his legs. And I was like, and this sounds horrible, but I was like, God, I wish that would happen to me. Because then I'd have an excuse not to go to work and not have to tell anybody that I was too weak to do my job. And so, like I said, it's not just about killing yourself. It's about wanting the pain to stop. And the cool thing is that you can get the pain to stop, and you can get all that to stop by asking for help, and people will help you without having to drive into a tree, without having to kill yourself. And
it's that shame. Just, you're talking about that shame.
Yeah, absolutely.
The stigma of getting help. You'd rather like suffer a physical injury and take the chance of maybe being paralyzed the rest of your life, in a coma the rest of your life. Because a physical injury, we could see, oh yeah, Christy broke her leg. Oh yeah, Christy, lost her arm. We get that. Oh, of course she can't work anymore. But, God forbid, Christy has some kind of mental health issues going on that she's afraid to talk about. You don't have to talk about that then.
Exactly. And it's funny too, because I had to go back to work and get, when you're gone from a position for more than 6 months, and they put your spot out to bid, like I was a captain on Engine 6. And so I was gone for more than 6 months. And so they put my spot out to bid. It's, somebody bidded it and took that spot. And so I had to come and clean out my locker and get my, turnouts and all of that stuff. And I made sure I went there when there was a crew there that I knew the people and I felt safe with. And, one of them, I asked him, I go, so, what's everybody saying about me? And he goes, nobody's talking shit about you. He said, everybody's scared now that if this could happen to you, it could happen to us, because you were the last person that we would have ever thought this would happen to.
Right.
And here I was the whole time thinking everybody thought I was just some big pussy who couldn't handle it. And they were thinking the opposite, like, oh, fuck, this could happen to us too.
Sure. Yeah, because you're a tough one. And, they didn't think that you would be going down that route. You can handle anything. You brought
exactly.
me
So,
here for all the different, assignments.
oh yeah. hmm Put me in the most dangerous spot, all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of goes to show you that what you think people think about you is not necessarily, the truth.
Exactly. Just try to ask for facts. Like, is this a fact? Are these just my thoughts, what I think? Am I catastrophizing the future? If someone looks
hmm
wrong, does it mean that they don't like me? I mean, what is this that I'm thinking? It's not true. You can't prove it unless you walk up to them and say, "Hey, what were you thinking about me just now?" Or "What are you talking about?" And they tell you the truth. But when I look at suicide, it's not where people just give up. It's not a easy way out. It's a thought of the world would be better without me, and
Absolutely.
that is a lie we tell ourselves. That I am in so much pain, first of all, and I've done so much damage, and people in my lives have pushed me away because I'm not willing to ask for help. It would be better if I wasn't here because I'm just causing problems. And that is a total lie we tell ourselves, and we believe it, and we don't ask for help. And we think that just talking about having suicide ideation and even a plan, it's going to get us locked up, 5150 in California, where we're held for 72 hours, and then we have a shrink look at us and poke and prod, and we can't do our job anymore. No, I think a lot of us, a majority of first responders, and maybe even people in general, have had fleeting thoughts of it, through their lives. I think it's just human nature to think of that. Although when it's compounded with addiction and trauma and depression and critical incidences that we do suffer, it does become more real, and it becomes like a way out, the only way out. And it is so unfortunate because you don't have to end it that way. You don't look at you. I mean, without you, I wouldn't have another friend. I wouldn't have known your life and your story and seen your struggles and your survival and your courage, and the things that you say are helping someone right this moment. So I firmly believe that. And if and people listening right now, you reach out to Christy, Google her name, Christy Warren, and Berkeley Fire, right?
hmm
And you'll find her and hook up and send her an email and let her know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And suicide is so impulsive too. And we're pretty impulsive people because that's how we operate. I don't think many first responders are good planners, and we're not good decision makers. We we react to things that happen in front of us, and that's an impulsive characteristic, and we can be very impulsive, and suicide can be very impulsive. So you just got to stop yourself and just know that you will do so much more damage by ending your life than by sticking around and asking for help. Even if you can't get your shit together, you know what I mean, and you continue drinking and your family doesn't want to talk to you or whatever, you ending your life will make people feel like, man, he couldn't even do that for me, or she couldn't even stay alive for me.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be hurting people so much more if you end it.
Yeah. 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 And it's it's a tragedy. It really, really is. So, and doing things that are uncomfortable, or if you say, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to make that phone call, I ask myself, why don't I? Why don't I? Why am I afraid to reach out to somebody? Would I rather just keep it inside and drink myself to death, or stay in this sorrow and be disgruntled every day I go to work, or have resentments if I'm not working anymore towards the place that I did work at, or the loss of friends, loss of my identity. Yeah, I miss being a police officer all the time, and I never will be a police officer again, a sworn police officer. But what I'm doing now, and getting through that, I know there's a way out. It's just about reaching out your hand and accepting help from another person, and things will get better because you get better. So,
Yep.
well, thanks, Christy. Thanks so much for being on the show again. We can't make it.
Oh my God. Thanks for having me.
Can't make it every 4 years.
No, we can't make it every 4 years.
I know we keep in contact, social media and texting and stuff like that. I just love watching you. I love you watching you grow. I mean,
You're so sweet.
So great, so much. And I'm glad we still keep in contact. I haven't been to WCPR since we met over there, but I've been meaning to get back.
But look what you're doing. You're doing amazing things, and your story is pretty incredible. I mean, really incredible. What you had to come back from, and I know a lot of people would have quit, and it's pretty remarkable what you've done. And so, yeah, and you're great. You're just a great, fantastic dude. And I love talking to you. And you started all this for me by making me be on your podcast in the first place.
That's right. I made you. I had your arm behind your back. I don't think
you harassed me for so long. And that's fine. Like, all right, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But look what it's turned into. So I thank you.
I know, it's great. And you are so welcome. I'm so glad it worked out that way. It makes me happy. That's what I do this job for. I mean, a podcast, not a job. This is just a hobby. I don't make any money, anything off it, but I love doing that and reaching out. And I just, that's why people work in the field. It's not necessarily the monetary value of doing it. If I did this, I wouldn't succeed. I could not do that. Of course, everybody has to make a living, right? But to see the progress in people and to see people actually for the very first time ask for help and the relief, like, the secret's out. We're as sick as our secrets. That's what they say. And if I don't have these secrets anymore, I'm not as sick, and I'm able to get help. And yeah, injuries, like I said earlier, we can see the injuries. We understand a broken leg. We understand different things that happen to us, but it's hard to see the treated wounds inside in our heart, in our bodies that we can't see, and we can't just like put a description on or a Band-Aid on. We have to work on it. So you've been a blessing to me and to everybody else.
Ditto.
So thank you so much.
Ditto. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Everybody listening, get a hold of Christy or call me anyway, or just reach out to somebody that you trust, and there is help available. Thanks for listening to Positive Connections Radio on the Mental Health News Radio Network. If you're having issues, you can do it alone. However, you don't have to. It takes courage to ask for help. How can we be there for others if we're unwilling to be there for ourselves? So until next time, be strong, stand up, speak your truth, and break the stigma.